Okay, so if you've walked into any bookstore in like the last 10 years, you have seen this book. You can't miss it. That super bright yellow cover, that bold title. Jen Sincero's You Are a Badass is way more than just a book. It's become this huge cultural phenomenon. A #1 New York Times bestseller that promised to change millions of lives. But today we're going to ask a slightly different question. What if the whole path to becoming a badass is actually built on some pretty flawed logic and maybe even some harmful advice? Let's dig in.
Right, so we are going to peel back the layers of this self-help giant. And by looking at what critics have said, we're going to explore this central question you see here. Is this book a real path to empowerment, or is it more of a toxic trap, full of victim blaming and some questionable science?
So first up, to really get why this book blew up, we have to look at its appeal. What's the big promise that made millions and millions of people go out and buy this thing?
I mean, the subtitle kind of says it all, doesn't it? It's just this direct, powerful call to action. It taps right into that feeling that I think we all have sometimes, that little voice that asks, am I really living up to my potential? Sincero's book comes along and basically shouts, no, but I can show you how.
And the book breaks that big promise down into these really concrete, really desirable goals. It's almost like a checklist for the perfect life, right? Identify your self-sabotaging beliefs. Blast past your fears, make more money, learn to love yourself, and crush your goals. I mean, honestly, who wouldn't want to sign up for that?
So how exactly does the book say it's going to deliver on all this? Well, this brings us to the first layer we're peeling back, the core philosophy. And it's not just think positive. No, it's this kind of quasi-scientific theory that might sound a little familiar if you've ever heard of The Secret.
Yep, at its heart is the good old law of attraction. Sincero says the universe is made of something called source energy, and everything, including you, me, and that fancy car you want, vibrates at a certain frequency. So to get what you want, you just have to, raise your frequency to match the vibration of all the awesome stuff. Simple as that.
And here is where the logic really starts to wobble for a lot of critics. Sincero tries to make this source energy thing sound all scientific by comparing it to gravity. But as the podcast If Books Could Kill points out, that's a classic bad argument. Just because one invisible thing is real, like gravity, that doesn't mean every invisible thing is real. I mean, as they say, I can't see werewolves either, but that doesn't make them real.
All right, let's go a layer deeper. So if the universe is just waiting to give you everything you've ever wanted, why are you still not rich and famous? Well, according to Sincero, there's an enemy, and it's inside you. It's a part of your own mind that is actively working against you.
She gives us this catchy name, the Big Snooze. Think of it as that lazy, scared part of your ego that absolutely hates change. But here's the really wild part. Sincero claims the Big Snooze isn't just a metaphor for self-doubt. Oh no. She argues it has actual physical power to mess with the world around you. Like literally.
And get this, as proof, she tells the story about a client who quit his job to follow his dream. And apparently his big snooze went to war. It gave him 2 flat tires, then it exploded his water main, and finally it got him hit by a bus. Critics point out this isn't presented as just a string of terrible luck. It's presented as a literal supernatural attack from his own subconscious.
And this is where the philosophy starts to shift from just kind of quirky to what critics say is genuinely dangerous. Because think about it. If your thoughts control reality, what does that say about all your problems? It means they're your fault. And let's see how this logic gets applied to really serious things, like depression and poverty.
Take depression. Sincero literally frames it as a story people tell themselves because it's cozy and it gets you attention or lets you drink beer for breakfast. As you can imagine, critics argue this is an incredibly harmful form of victim blaming that just totally ignores the actual biological and psychological facts of a serious medical condition.
And the exact same logic gets applied to being poor. The book suggests that people stay broke because of the false benefits. You get to be a victim or other people will pay for stuff for you. This just boils down massive, complex economic and systematic issues into a simple personal mindset problem.
So this brings us to our final layer, what many critics call the grift. This is the part where the focus on mindset and money stops being just a philosophy and becomes a business model designed to sell you a very, very expensive dream.
A huge part of the whole package is the writing style, which some critics have described as just painfully try-hard. Just listen to this story about Henry Ford. I mean, besides the super weird dialogue, what's the actual lesson here? Just yell at your employees until they accomplish the impossible? It's packaged as badass inspiration, but it's totally empty of any real useful advice.
And what about that practical advice for making all that money? Well, a lot of it comes down to this. Just repeat mantras. No, seriously. In her follow-up book about money, every single chapter ends with some variation of, I love money. The solution to your complex financial problems is basically just to want it really, really hard.
So where did Sincero learn this whole model? Well, it turns out she used to be the customer. She went to one of these seminars, got super inspired, and bought a year-long coaching package on the spot. And the price tag for that package? A jaw-dropping $85,000, money she had to borrow.
And to really understand how someone goes from borrowing 85 grand to becoming a self-help superstar, you kind of have to look at her whole journey. Because as critics are quick to point out, You Are a Badass was not her first attempt to strike publishing gold.
Yeah, years before Badass, Sincero wrote this book. Critics often point to it as a previous grift attempt, a book just packed with seriously problematic advice, all hidden under a really provocative title. Seeing this kind of reframes her whole journey. Maybe it wasn't a sudden spiritual awakening, but a long search for whatever message would finally sell.
And this brings us right to the heart of the critique, what's called the self-help grift cycle. Remember that $85,000 coaching package she bought? The secret advice she paid all that money for was to become a life coach herself. It's this perfect circular system where the main thing you're buying is the chance to sell the exact same thing to other people, all of it fueled by debt and desire.
So, after peeling back all these layers, the slick promise, the pseudoscience, the victim blaming, and this whole economic model, we are left with one big final question.
So, is this book really a tool for empowerment, or is it just a really clever way to take complex, systemic problems, rebrand them as personal failings, and then sell you an expensive cure? The book's incredible success proves just how badly we all want to believe in our own power. But the critique asks a pretty tough question. What is the real cost of that belief? And who's the one that's really profiting?